Talafalava, thank you for joining me today. First, we ask our Heavenly Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit to bless this show with divine wisdom. This is a talk show where we celebrate, debate, question, interview topics that are happening around the whole of the Moana Pacific. I have once again Professor Dr. Afualo Wood Salele, a Samoan economist, academic, and former MP, who's a leading voice on education, economic development, and national growth in Samoa. It's a pleasure to have you on the show again, Professor. Welcome.
Yeah, Talofa, once again, it's a pleasure to have me on your podcast, Mike. And I would also like to take this special opportunity to welcome all our listeners and viewers, and hope the usual ones and those who have just joined us. And having said that, we should also thank God for the opportunity that led us to this very moment. Yeah, Charlotte.
Thank you, Professor, for joining us again. We really appreciate your time and good feedback, good people messaging me and giving me good feedback on the information that you're coming from your mind and, the time that you're giving for us. So thank you again, Professor. I just wanted to recap on the week. How was your week? I know we had a week off, due to some things that, we can't control, family matters. But Professor, how was your week? 2 weeks since we've last talked to you.
Yeah, so far so good. Um, Physically speaking, I'm as healthy, I'm as fit as a fiddle. If
Yeah,
we
that's
use
good.
that. Anyway, yeah, God has been good to me and my family as well. And for Samoa, yeah, we have been experiencing, very cool nights and even day. So I guess this is one of the um, direct impacts of El Nino. Um, so yeah, it's quite cool in nowadays. And overall, the main conference of the Methodist Church has now come to an end. And I also would like to take this opportunity to congratulate all of those who have been selected from their parishes to represent their parishes in the annual conference. And I think um, usually when the selection of the executive committee, that would be called out today. But I think it was probably Thursday that the vote for the president and the secretary and the treasurer were done. So given that uh, the existence of the vote for both president, the current president, and the secretary as well as the treasurer have been carried with. Yeah, so by the end of the next conference, we will have a new secretary, which has just been selected. And I, take this opportunity to extend, my congratulations to the newly elected secretary, which will be effective as from next year. In the conference, his name is Reverend Chamfai Kobik. Yeah. So, and the tradition that we have here in the general conference, usually in almost all the cases, whoever becomes the secretary, that minister will also, almost likely that would be the next president. So that would be in another year or two. Yeah. So those are other than the general matters discussed by the General Conference, both the main conference and also the House of Felfani conference as well. The Assembly of God, they are also winding down their conferences as well. Yeah, and there's been quite a few, coming in and going out of Samoa, both as tourists, foreign tourists, and even Samoan tourists who are revisiting the families. But schools have now been back to normal. I mean, US just started, and US has just started lectures this week. So by next week, almost all of the colleges and intermediate schools, including primary, will resume. Yeah, and I think that's where we are in the moment. But the weather, it's quite windy. Hopefully that we don't experience any disturbing windy conditions as we go along towards the end of the year. Yeah, so that's where we are. As usual, the cost of living, yes, it's still the same situation. There are some, particularly the consumption goods, which are required for daily. The prices are, I would say, manageable, but for the rest, most of the families, they are finding the cost of living, quite expensive at the moment. I can't blame them for that too, and even the situation, because as we now see that there was a pause in the war in Middle East, and hoping that the negotiations between President Donald Trump and the mullahs of Iran, we would hope that would stand, but that's not the case. It's now going back to full war.
Yeah, man.
So very soon we will be affected, but even Australia too, in terms of the price of oil. Because the price went down, but now. So, and I hope we have a sufficient supply that is in storage. I'm sure we have for another few months, but then if the war continues as the way it is, then hopefully that the government has a good plan for the cost of living here in Samoa and the region as well. And so let's hope for peace to prevail in the Middle East.
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening overseas. We got political issues in Samoa, but I mean the political issues overseas, and it's just it's a different game, Professor. And hopefully that.
Well,
yep.
As I was discussing the introduction of my course last night, one of the postgrad, it's advanced macroeconomics. It's the advanced macro semester, so advanced macro is this semester. And in the introduction, I went through with students. All of them are senior public servants. Some have just entered the workforce. But I started with the situation that we are now facing, particularly in the cost of living, and looking into the assessment of what we call exogenous variables and endogenous variables. And especially, particularly because now the budget is fully fledged, which is now, in third week, so to speak, second week and that budget of 1.5 billion, although it's projected, given based on the current expectations of what might happen in the future. And I hope that expectation of the 1.5 billion, the disturbances that is now happening in the Middle East would take into account, for any mishaps, because otherwise it's going to be tough, for the Ministry of Revenue and even the customs and other government ministry to collect the revenue. So that would affect the whole of the transference of revenue from government to the ministries, and then of course to the private sector. And if you look at it from the macro economic side, they would have serious implications on what we call endogenous variables. In other words, these are economic terms, but these are the indicators. These are the variables that that formulate or that form the major components of all the components of the budget, such as income, trade, revenue, tax, and so on. So it's quite very unstable at the moment because of what is happening overseas, and I think that goes for Australia, New Zealand, and even Fiji and other Papua New Guinea and other island countries as well. Yeah, so this time now, especially for small island states like Samoa, the management of the economy through looking into the endogenous variables is very, very must be taken very, very seriously. Meaning that they should now look into the expenditure function that will affect the whole budget in this quarter because of the war. And if they're not cut down on the expenses, it will have a huge impact on the overall. And so recovery might take some time. Now, on the other hand, we also have the most, I would say, the most alarming condition that we have, which is the exogenous variables. In other words, these are the parameters. These are the variables that we don't have a control over, such as the price, such as oil, natural catastrophes, and others. So that's the most worrying part of it. But we cannot do anything about it. All we can do is to prepare a plan B with response to those, because in most cases we cannot actually see the mind of God, if we are to use this. So we may have developed some, I would say, some reliable instruments to try and expect what might happen in the future. But that's just the expectation. But anything can change that. So at least the very best of our ability that we can come to. So for us, Christians, whatever comes, whether it's good or bad, we will still we hold on to our faith, and we know that God will always be there. And the agnostics, those who do not believe in God, they say this and that and that, but but we know that God is real, and Jesus Christ is real. So the force which is out there that protects us and humanity and also the earth, God will not let destruction, um, you know, go all the way through, because the earth, it's His creation, and and He is still in control. And though that all the elements of the natural world that we see around us, mankind or humanity, man is the crowning glory of God's creation, and we know that. Yeah, we cannot deny that, because in your psyche, in your mind, even those who proclaim to be atheists, because at the end of the day, when life is taken out of you, then your soul will face the music. But once that situation comes, it might be too late for it. But we know that the whole of the earth is a special creation for mankind, and it's a happy that was created especially for us. And then, of course, the spirit that we have, which is from God Himself, who gave us that life, that breath of life. And so, therefore, as we live every second of our lives, we must enjoy, because you don't know, life is, I would say, from the economic viewpoint, in terms of development, life is the most riskiest business that you can ever, engage yourself with, because you just don't know what might happen the next second, and that's the truth. Yeah. So hopefully that that things will turn out. But I know that we are in the good hands of the Lord. So and all things work for the good of those who love the Lord. So whatever happens, even with there is an increase or the rise of persecution in the church. When you look at the Christians all over, especially in Africa, the persecution is as bad as it was when we look at the history of Christianity. But that doesn't stop the spread of the gospel, because there is no force, nothing in this world that can stop the love of God through His Son to be spread. And that is the salvation that we all yearn for. Because this life that we live in is just as temporary as any other part of the creation. And then when that is then you will go and see where, like that's what Revelation tells us. That's what was given to John. When that book of life is open, then surprisingly that everything that you did, everything that you spoke about, everything is recorded. Yeah. So what can you say? Are you gonna lie? No. So at least while we are living, and even using your podcast, we also use this platform as a stage to spread the word, and be a witness as well.
Yeah, well said,
Yeah, so,
Professor. Just to add on to what you're saying there, or just to ask you, Professor, as a Christian myself, and we talk about God and Christ, and the lessons that He teaches us. I think everyone goes through their own different lessons in their life. Everyone's got their own little issues and stuff like that. I think some of the ones that really triggered me, one of my biggest lessons is manipulation. It's this topic here, manipulation, where people hurt people, hurt other people. And when I'm a very simple man. I like to keep things very simple and makes common sense so everyone can understand it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I like to that's the way I see things. And when I
Yeah.
think about manipulation, it's such it's a big. I don't know what your thoughts on this, but it, kind of like moving away from what we're talking about, but manipulation, because a lot of manipulation is one of my biggest triggers when people manipulate it, or someone just says things that is not true, and spreads
Yeah.
rumors. And it's in our community. It's a big thing, fake color, and sharing gossip and stuff like. It's a massive thing, and some people can swim in it because they got connections and people in it, and some people can't. Some people struggle. And so then people who I feel struggle, they start to turn hard, and that hardness starts to go and project out to the world. But behind that person and their hardness, it's a pure love, like what we talk about with God and the lightness of God. It's there, and I reflect on my the comments last. I've been commenting back to a lot of the people online, just playing around. But when I analyze these people that are talking, it comes back to this thing. They're hurt. They hurt a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. They really hurt. They don't like corruption. They don't like money being
Yeah.
displaced. And this is where it hurts me, because I'm looking at the political spectrum and I'm like, I can see it, because I can have the patience to look at it. But I'm looking at it and going, what's happened with the HRPP, what's happened in all that stuff. That's it's really kind of like my mind's in a state of trying to help people to see it. But people don't have the time and the patience to kind of sit there and understand it. So I try my best, But that's why when I see this, you see in the comments, it's so harsh, It's so bad, But I hope God can, as we challenge life, we continue to kind of work through this. But
Yeah, well,
Professor,
that's very true. But I feel given the platform of this new technology that we now enjoy, this is all part of God's blessings to humanity. We are living in the age of technology, but then at the same time, remember Christ before he ascended to heaven, he gave his disciples the most important commission. It's the greatest commission to go out and preach the good news to all the corners of the earth. So once that is done, and baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, when that is completed, then he will come back. Now, having said that, now with the Facebook and the internet, it gives mankind, us, the disciples, an opportunity, a great opportunity to be a witness in whatever way. And then at the same time, we are also seeing the devil. We're also seeing, how Satan manipulates them.
yeah,
Because we know that whenever someone says all those very negative things, even you look at the language, that's not the language of peace. That's, Christ never swore or even, how hard and how difficult it was when he was, trying to minister God's love through him. People still just turn away. And up to the very extreme, of crucifying him. So when you look at, the Via Dolorosa, the road of the cross, it's interesting, and you can only sit down and try and think and imagine the pain that the Lord went through. So when we look at all of this, I would say, vulgar, foul language that comes, using this new technology. For me, I just look at it from the positive viewpoint. I know that it's information. Sometimes information comes to you through a very, very negative way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes if there is valuable information that you wanted to know and have, would never come to you from a friend who is, Christ-like, because, he talks about love and all of this, rather than trying to look into the negative side of all these discourses. And, that person would not want to hurt you as well. So at the same time, he or she is withholding that vital information that you need to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with the internet, Facebook and all of this, you see that. Now, those people who just by their own choices decided to dwell on the negative side will see that. And the devil is really, really strong in making sure that they will remain as they are. Now, if that is the situation, then us, the disciples of Christ, we love conquers that. Love, whatever. Nothing can overcome the love of Christ. And it's important that and that's why forgiveness, remember, from even, all the way from the 10 Commandments, and then Christ reiterates that he is the fulfillment of the law. And what is the law? You must love your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. And then you love your enemies, love the neighbors and so on. So for Christ, what he went through, the divinity that he has was even challenged in the cross. And then think of us, just mere mortals, we are human beings. And I'm reading through what most of the saints and even this very, the disciples went through persecution and everything, but they remain. And that is because of that, that goodness that exists within Christ, which is now being being transformed to us. Now, what I'm trying to say is that with all this negative stuff that comes, it's one of the very, very effective tool by the devil to really tempt us. But having said that, I myself have received a lot of that, but I don't look at it as something bad. I look at it as something good. So I look at the information and say, okay, this and this. So when I try to reach out to others, I use that information too. You know what I mean? Yeah. So theologically speaking, it has been around with the disciples, from Jesus Christ all the way even to this very day. And we can turn around and use the negativity, make it a good thing, and how can that be done? First, we have to forgive them. We start from forgiveness. Before Christ, before his soul was, before he died on the cross, he just said, Father, please forgive them, us, mankind, because we know nothing about what we have done. So that's amazing. So to start that process, that healing process within us humans, we need to forgive them and let God do with the rest of the conversion and the transformation. And then
Professor,
because if we don't,
Yep. just, you know, when you're talking about forgiveness, and I agree 100% with you, and I love, because this is what Jesus says, you know, to always forgive. Um, just say if you've, what is the definition of forgive? Like, I mean, forgive, but then, for example, if we're talking about manipulation, I mean, you get manipulated, right? And then you forgive, but then you get manipulated again, you know, and it's almost like, how many times are we supposed to, and like, can you interpret that in what you think, Professor?
Yeah. Now you talk about manipulation. Manipulation it's part of the art of the deal. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, if you look at what's happening with Iran and Donald Trump administration, there's been a lot of manipulation that goes along when it comes down to sit down.
yeah, yeah.
So the other side tries to outwit the other one, you know, like that. So in reality, when you use that, because it's a characteristic of us, of mankind. And remember, all of this, the good and the bad, it's under God's 7 attributes. And remember, we talk about this,
Mm,
you know, the 7 characteristics of God, you know, like love, the information, and so on, you know.
yeah.
And within that, it still exists this bad, but because God is good, we know that, and His love endures forever. That means whatever negative aspects that exist, uh, the goodness of God overcomes that. Now let's come back to the manipulative side. The greatest manipulator of all, do you know who's the greatest manipulator?
I would say the devil. Who's,
Of
yeah,
course, it's Lucifer. You
yeah,
know,
Lucifer, yeah.
yeah, it's Satan.
Mm,
You know, he manipulated millions, about 1/3 of God's angels.
mm, mm,
Whatever promises that he gave them, and then they joined him, and they ended up making war, you know, against the cherubim, the seraphims, you know, and so
mm,
Michael, the archangel, led the war, you know, that defeated him and chased him out. So it goes back to the origin of all of this.
yeah.
So when our fellow brothers and sisters, when they dwell in that that habit of being a manipulator, it's not a good thing, you know, because what goes around comes around. If you try to manipulate someone thinking that you will take advantage, you know, of whatever, it will always come back to you sometime. Someone or whatever condition that they have happened in the future will come back to you.
Mm, mm,
Now, for forgiveness, as we talk about, this is a very special attribute of God that was instilled within us. And forgiveness can only come through when you have that genuine love of Christ within you. Regardless of how bad, if we look at history, um, you know, various civilizations that have come and gone, they performed inhumane persecutions, not just the church, but if you look at the mass execution of other ethnic minorities. But since it's within us, but we try to overcome that by the love of Christ. And once you have that, then whatever happens, you know, the good will. And through that, you are able to forgive. Because if you cannot forgive, you know, the very that you know what the Pope says, to forgive, to err is human, and to forgive is divine. So the Pope is very true.
mm,
The Pope spoke like Christ. Uh, we are humans, you know, and we commit a lot of bad things. But then at the same time, to acquire forgiveness, we have to be like Christ. We have to take up the mantle of Christ and then, allow the healing to listen. And we are one. Because at the end of the day, sometimes I would imagine a heaven. And this is just me, yeah. And I would just lie and think about the heavenly bodies and all these scientific findings that we now have. We'll never have this knowledge, in other civilizations. But with technology, we have ships. We have ships. They are now going all the way out to other galaxies, and a lot of information are now coming in. But what amazes me is that even with this so advanced knowledge that we have about what surrounds us, there's only 5%. This is the scientific. Only 5% of the existence of the universe is what we know. So that means 95% of what is out there we don't know.
Yeah.
And that's scientifically proven. So you see how big God is, because the debate is still going on about the creation, and now we look into the black hole and all of these understandings. Even it's interesting, but for me, when I think about it, and I try to imagine gods, but John gave that to us in Revelation and even through Isaiah and Ezekiel, but John clearly gave us the picture of what heaven looks like. So whoever are listening, read over. I know it's difficult, John. The Revelation is quite difficult to understand. But if you take some time to pray and seek the Holy Spirit, read, and then you'll find that after that you read again. You'll see. You begin to see what lies ahead, and that's what all of those saints, all of those disciples that have come before us, including this very day, that's what they yearn for. And regardless of whatever human persecution, that's nothing. Pain is nothing. Because eternity with Christ, through what John has tried to explain in Revelation, far outweighs anything. And I think for our brothers and sisters who are saying all of those foul and negative things, don't do that. But if you do it with a bad intention and a bad heart to harm us or even others as well, we know that what goes around comes around.
That's
and
right.
we will be judged. And we will be judged. So don't worry, Mike. Because the more they say, of negative things towards us, the stronger that we become. So I always, for me, I just welcome those. I look at it from the good side, as a knowledge seeker. I take very, very honest observations of what is being said, because that's what I do when I give out assignments for researchers or essays. I always encourage students to be critical. I always bring the best out of them through that critical thinking ability, which is part of what God gave us. And I said to them, if you know that it's not good, come on, say everything that you feel that it's not good. If it's good, and then from there, you as a judge like myself, as an educator, I sit down and read through, and I said, my goodness, because and that's what God. So.
Yeah, 100%.
The profession, with the academic profession that we involved with, we go through a lot of those emotions, and we understand, because even the psychology, when you look at the psychology of it, it assists us in understanding the complexity of the human mind and the human heart. Because what comes out of your mouth, or even what comes out of your fingertips, comes from your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if they after committing that offense, and then they can say, "Oh, please forgive me," then that's fine. But we can forget, but the real forgiveness comes from God. I think that's where people need to know, that the real forgiveness comes from God. We can say, "Okay, we forgive," but between you and God, that's the most important part.
Yeah. Well said.
That's why a lot of people, whether you are an atheist or agnostic or whatever, communist, once you found that relationship with Christ, they become new human beings. They become, the transformation is so amazing that you can instantly see, boy, this person is changed. And but then you can ask what happened, and then the story. Then you start to hear the testimony. Like what we're seeing all over the world. Regardless of even. So for us, we just wish our brothers and sisters who are committing all of this unnecessary vulgar language, because I'm sure their parents did not teach them that. Some families may have a rough environment, but the bulk of Samoan families, even Christian homes, you don't hear that, you don't see that. And remember, this is one of the dark side of education too, because education allows you to explore both sides, the dark and the light. You know what I mean? Yeah, because it's available. It's there in the literature. If you look into, then if you also look into the history of Harry Potter, you see, if you look at the author, it's amazing how she went through and all of those, and then that's the dark side of and using that force, using that the magic, because it does exist. It does exist. Yeah. But then again, it was Christ who overcome all of those, because the devil is the most powerful other than Christ.
I think where I'm at the moment with my faith, and I'm still, as I said, I everything that I see in the Bible, it's the holy book that really guides our life. But I feel like it's a very advanced book, and people interpret it in their own way. And but I look at it and I just think that I'm still trying to work through certain aspects, like for scenarios like this. I feel like I'm such a person that wants to try. When you're trying to fix something, you're probably like, when you're going through your equation, you just want to fix it. You want to figure it out. Sometimes, and that's just where you have to sometimes step outside the box. It's not inside the box. You have to go outside the box to kind of get it. And I feel like when I go, I'm a person that's very determined to find a solution. How can we make peace for everyone, not only just Samoans, but just in families? And I don't know if other people think like that, but I'm sure deep down like everyone wants that, and they're chasing that in their own certain way. emotionally. And you said there's a lot of testimonies that come out, and it's so beautiful to see hardened men. I've seen hardened men, they come out and they come from jail, they come had a hard life, and they give to God, baptize, and they testimony in front of people and say, I would never think that I would do this. And it's so beautiful to see. And for me, I'm still in, I feel like I'm still like trying to figure out the equation. How can I, the brothers and sisters that are swearing at me and all blah, blah, blah. Like,
Yeah,
like exactly what you're saying. Well, I have that deep in my head. What goes around comes around, But then at the end of the day, I don't like to kind of kick my brother and sister if I'm a type of person like, if I get back at them, but then I'll help them up again and say, come on, man, like we're all on the same side, we're not, this is not what I'm trying to do in my life. But yeah, it's sad what's happening in the political realm. And I hope God guides us towards that. The more we talk and the more we
yeah,
explain.
and that's very true. I think it's just something that just popped up. I was reading through one of the recent Nobel Prize winners in literature, in English, and amazingly, he told his testimony. He grew up in a Christian family, and then somehow he just got taken away through education, writings, and everything. He won the Nobel Prize in literature. And then he became one of the most avid supporter. He was an atheist. He just, used all of his knowledge from writing and learning to disqualify the existence of God. But somehow, somewhere, he felt that something was missing. So he decided to, for the bestowal of the literature, this very prestige, the highest prestige. Then he decided to study the Bible. he never did that, but he got the accolades, from writing. And amazingly, after he went through the whole Bible, he was, I just can't explain, because even when I look at it and I was, even myself too, I was touched, I said, oh God, but that happens to, all of us. So he became born again, and he just testified about the truth of the Bible and the truth about Jesus Christ's salvation. And each I say, from a secular academics who profess to be an atheist. Now, God, through Jesus Christ, touches us through studying the Bible. And a lot of people. So for all of those who have the habit of going on social media and trying to discredit and defame others, please think twice about that. I always, whenever I post on the social media, I try to offend others. I always look into the positive way and trying to make sure that the love of Christ, is being shared to them. Because once you turn around and use that as a tool, an eye for an eye. Remember that's one of the Jewish, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So when Christ came, Christ just changed that.
Yeah.
If someone slaps you on the right cheek, you turn the other cheek.
That's right.
And that's so powerful. I said, my gosh, if someone hits you, and then by human nature, you just want to hit it back. But Christ said, no, you let that person hit.
Yeah.
But that's what Christ, rather than eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I think there are legal avenues that we can go through if we want that, but we can just forgive. But I think the theology of what is happening around now, a lot of people are now going against the state of Israel. And they have been brainwashed. And they have now taken up the mantle of anti-Semitism, which is really sad. Because they just don't really understand about the situation. But if you look at the heart of the problem now, Europe is facing with the influx of migration, particularly from the Muslim communities. So it's really shaping the core of the Europe, Christian, and then so they're now looking into trying to come back to the reality. You just cannot allow this, all of this, I would say, harsh ideas to come around and overwhelm and overshadow what you have. It's amazing I've been following this very, very closely, even in the United States now. With under the Trump administration, they're now going back to re-strengthen and recommit United States to its real Christian roots, which is good, really good. And I think for Samoa, in this case, we are trying to the EPA's government, and even now with the Laodi's government also on that track as well. Now, I think for Australia, I saw quite a few posts, trying to challenge the status quo. Remember, Australia was founded on Christian principles. If you look at it, and even the settlers. But with the new wave of all of this Islamic and other challenges, so Australia really has to look into the heart of her soul and find out who exactly you are and who you are. But the bottom line is a Christian country like New Zealand, and then the rest of the Pacific as well. So yes, we are living in this challenging period, but then at the same time, we have to yearn for Christ-like characteristic to overcome those. Otherwise, we will go with eye for an eye for us.
You know that you mentioned it, Professor. And I've mentioned this topic many times after we've talked. We have a One Nation party, which is Pauline Hanson. This lady, she's a English background, and she's obviously big on the immigration story, like the immigration take on that. On kind of targeting on immigrations, because there's a big problem of different people bringing their religions and their way of life to another country. I think for me, this is why it goes so deep, because as I said, I'm always trying to figure out how can we come to a solution. If we, to me, Professor, I mean, you can correct me what your thoughts are on this, but to me, it's almost like this is why I find history so important to me. And this is why manipulation is a big thing where I like to kind of call it out. When you go back to history and we talk about the Aboriginal land, it's almost like are we going to completely just put a blanket over the fact that there was a massive genocide in the Aboriginal land, and put a blanket over what happened in Fiji and Samoa? We had drama, we had wars, and there's a massive hurts. And so this is where it comes back to what I was saying earlier with our hurts and our manipulation. People are hardened by trauma from generations before. When our people got, went to war, it disrupted our families. It disrupted our elderly. Our elderly passed away. Then you can think about the trauma that mum and the dad had to take care of their kids. Then their kids continue on, and then their kids had to try and build the mau, and then the mau came along and they fought back, and it was just back and forward. So much trauma towards these generations that have come forward. And now we're coming to the generation today, and it's almost like, this is why I find it very offensive. I'm all about the immigration, if there's a little bit too much, yes, to me, it's not a people's, when you put the issue out to say, what do you think? We should get these guys and send them back, or send these guys back to wherever they came from. But, you know, coming back to the teachings of God, of Jesus, it goes against that principle. But this is where I say, this is how evil these people are in politics. They come and use it as a campaign so they can get into power. But they forget the people that put these people in Australia, in New Zealand, are the people in politics. It's the political campaign. So this is why it offends me a lot, because a lot of these people are they don't have the time to analyze history, analyze their trauma. So then they turn around to their brothers and sisters. We got Samoans versus Samoans. We got Indians versus the Samoan community, and it's like all because of this campaign of immigration. It's an inflection. But hey, if we want to look at the source, we have to go back and fix it from there. It's almost like a little bit, and I'm chucking it out here. It's almost like the stuff that's happening in Samoan politics at the moment. We have to, if we want to fix up what's happening in Samoa, we had to go all the way to the back when the constitution was broken. If we really want to fix up, we have to correct that. When, this whole facade, when we've seen the cameras come out, if we really want to fix Samoa and make peace, because a lot of people are manipulated and they think, Tulepa is bad and blah, 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 blah. And still to this day. But really, they're just being politically manipulated. And this is why I'm so strong with the HLPP. But that's, Professor. Sorry.
You're absolutely right. I think the issue with immigration, I've got nothing I can say. Because I've visited quite a few continents myself. Although that I went there not as an immigrant, but I went there for education and lived there, and I have made a lot of friends amongst the immigrants, in Australia, even in Canada and other places as well. So I've got nothing against that. Remember the whole idea of this immigration boom, if we can, it's all part of the globalist vision.
Yeah.
And that's where the challenge is now faced with mankind. And I think Europe also is now experiencing that. Now you're seeing that old patriotic attitude in some of the European countries are now coming back. They want to deport all of them.
Yeah.
And particularly the Muslims, the Muslim. Because if you emigrate as a Christian, I don't think you will face those challenges. Because most of the Europeans are Christians as well. So you're part of the family of the greater Christian family, like in Australia, even New Zealand, and other places, USA, even Europe. But if you emigrate as a Muslim or even a Hindu, and I think that is where the challenge is. And politicians have to really come up with a resolution that will make sure that everybody is being looked after. There's, like for Australia, there's been one nation. I was watching Pauline's argument about multicultural, and she has a point too. She has a point. Because, like take Samoans as an example. We go to Australia and New Zealand, the United States and other places. No one will take that Samoan from us. No one.
Yeah.
The Samoan that we have, But when we go there, we try to live amongst the society and be part of that. But the unfortunate reality is that other immigrants don't want that. That's the challenge. They just want to be on their own and then do what they want, and then all of a sudden, or somewhere along the plan, that they want to overcome the rest. And that is the challenge. Because if this happens, if you look at for example, the history of Europe and the Muslims and the Islams, Spain was conquered, was occupied by the Muslims for almost 700 years. And that's a lot. and through wars, and then Queen Isabel and they decided that it's time to take up the challenge. And we know the history that when the Muslim lost, they were given very strict conditions. It's either you convert, become a Catholic. At that time, there was no preference, Either you become a Christian or, and then the majority, some stay and become Christians, and the rest, they went back to, they deported back to Africa. And I think that includes Jews as well, And we look at that case there. So it's interesting when you look at the Middle East, and then of course the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman Empire, came into existence for about 500, almost 600 years. And they did a lot of trying to, the wars, because they were once the most powerful. And through wars, they extended the Islamic faith all the way up to whole of Greece and then, Eastern Europe. But then in the future, the Western side, where the bulk of the strength of Christianity, like France, England, Germany, Spain, and even in Russia, the resurgence of Orthodox, they were the ones who moved back. They pushed back towards the Ottomans, and then come World War I and then World War II. That was the end of the Ottomans. So that's why you still have that situation in like Albania, in Central Europe, because some in that area there, where Kosovo and all of this, the Ottomans were very strong in establishing the Islamic beliefs. So bit by bit, Europe went back to full Christianity, except for some. But now that's another story. Looking to focus, there's about 500 or maybe more millions Muslims in Europe through this migration. That's a lot. That's a lot. So for the first time in the history of United Kingdom, now the king or the queen has a mandate that he or she is the head of the Christian, the faith, not many faiths. But now with King Charles now, is moving away from that tradition. It's now accommodating the multi-faith approach because of the growth of the Islamic population through birth rate and also migration. So I hope in the future, English situation and other places will not end up in civil war. I hope not. But what happened in Spain, it will also happen. The only way to settle that is to go through that and then keep the rest out, send them back in. That's history. We cannot, and even looking at the United States now, like some of the cities like Airport and all of those, that's just, they target themselves as Muslim. So that really brings the ire of other states like Texas and other to come up with new regulations to ban, to ban, the Sharia law and all of that. So all I'm saying is just to reiterate what history has been around. So we can learn from them. And if politicians are able to bring that linkage to make sure that we live peacefully with our neighbors, then that's fine with me. But I think as a Christian, if you might go to Europe or even America, even Canada, even Australia, New Zealand, and other African countries where most of the majority are Christian, and even Asia, you have no problem. But if you go to a Muslim country seeking an immigration status, it's going to be very difficult.
But Professor, I just want to add into that. My thoughts on a lot of the reasons why the people move from overseas to another country. If you ask
Yeah,
every immigrant in India at the moment, obviously there's conditions where they want a better life. A lot of these people coming over for a better life. But there's places like Sudan, there's places like Greece back in the day, Asia, when they came into Australia. These people that came to Australia had left their country because of war. And this is where I'm
that's
coming
right.
back. This is where when I'm looking at it from a bigger perspective, from the perspective of the fact that who are the people in their countries that are causing the war? And it comes back to politics. It comes back to politics. And so here again, Australia, when Hansen tries to bring this and says, we have an immigration problem. But the question is, Hansen, who allowed the immigrants to come into Australia? Your political friends. So we need to call that out. If you're going to come into the game, don't use the campaign to verse the people, to verse the people. Hanson, you know the history. You know it wasn't
Yeah,
just anyone just say, come from India, anyone come from Syria. They all want to come into Australia. But who signed that off as your friends? And this is what I'm trying to say. It's happening in our country as well. This is why governments need to pay respects to the people, because now when you see Laoli, I'm not trying to, I don't like to kind of, pressure him, but like I have to call it for what it is. When he says no more media, he says, that's enough, I'm not going to do any more press conferences. And then when he says, don't take my photo, you're not allowed to use my photo. When he went to Tokelau, you're not allowed to use my photo. Things like this, right? I mean, you are the leader of everyone's money in the country. You are supposed to be
yeah,
taking your photo. I'm sorry, because if we allow this mentality of like you stand up here and I'm down here, just like here in Australia and New Zealand, the same thing happens. I think we've lost Professor. Professor, you still there? Yep.
yeah. You're back now.
And so that's what I'm saying with the politics at the moment, and this is why I'm so hard on. This is the core reason why I stand here and I'm trying to help with the politic issue. It's not because I'm trying to favor one person. It's to favor what's the truth, and then to try and help other people to see the truth. Because when it comes back down to the itty gritty of everything, it's politics. When it comes down to why there is war in Syria, why there is war in overseas. Even I watched a documentary last night. Nauru used to be the most richest country in the world, nation in the world, because they had this sulfate or some kind of chemical. As you said, Professor, before, we are lucky that we're not plagued by a resource that's that brings in the people to come in to then wanting to monopolize our whatever resource we have. So when you think about it, it's happening to our brothers in Papua New Guinea. Half of Papua
Yeah,
New Guinea
I,
has been wiped out and given to Singapore. And this is where, this is where I'm saying to you, Professor, the people, and this is what I said to you before, manipulation is the biggest trigger for me. Because if you have an honest heart, bring it all out. And you've said it so many times, let it out, let it out, let it out, so we can come to understand, what's happening. But these politicians, they don't play like that. They don't play clean. They are very, very smart because they got interest in their side, and then it's a big subject, Professor. But it all comes back around to what I'm saying.
you know, I was reading over the story of when Julius Caesar was murdered. That's, I mean, for our listeners, if they have time, I think it's also available on YouTube. The documentary, it's amazing how he was murdered by Brutus and other senators.
Yeah.
But then the aftermath of the event was so gruel, because Caesar's nephew, Octavius, was the one who became Caesar after all the turmoil and the pain the Roman Empire went through in trying to find justice and bring all of those who conspired to murder Julius Caesar was so, I couldn't imagine, because they were stripped of everything, their lives, the wealth and everything. So if we look at politics, because that's politics,
Yeah.
But politics, to me, I am a politician. Remember, I was in parliament as well. But at the moment, I keep my total focus on as an academic. Yeah. So I try to balance the way I look at things, mostly from my academic hat. That's where you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because when I look at the history, I look at the history, not just Samoa, the Pacific, and even the world, and then I try to make sense of my status as a politician when I was in my class. Some of the decisions that you really have to make that will, how hurtful it can be, but you have to make it. But the problem that we face is that when politicians come around those hardcore decisions, they don't want to take the responsibility, and that's where they play that tactic.
Yeah.
Then they try to manipulation part of it. Then they look at friends or even others, the environment, the situation to manipulate rather than going straight into the core of the topic. And if we can do that, look at Donald Trump. What all the differences people say, but I saw something completely different from this president. Because I read the histories of previously, and I look at this guy who came out of the business community.
Yeah.
He just came in and run the government like a business. So when you come with that business-minded, kind of attitude, you just don't care about the politics around. All you have to make sure is you maximize the profit. That's the main important thing, is to make sure that you get that, because at the end of the day, once you get that profit, the rest of the environment will fall into place. But when you try to play that political maneuverability, if we can use that term, you're trying to use others to sacrifice for your own gains. That's not good. That's not good, because it will come back to you. And history, like I just told you about that dramatic event that took place when Julius Caesar was murdered by one of his friends, Brutus and so on. Wow, but then if we look at Samoa, for example, it happens in the history of Samoa to look into, see what happened to my brother Longalau. Longalau, it's because I also hold the Longalau title. All family were very sad, but he paid the price for it. The case is history now. Though the perpetrators, paid their due, and I think some still trying to blame Dr. Chuleba, but he has nothing to do with that. He was vindicated. But anyway, so that kind of it happens everywhere. Now, for Australia, yeah, you're absolutely right. I hope the current government can be able to maintain that. But if you if you look at what Albanese is now doing, remember I saw a video of him visiting the Muslim community, and then he was foul-mouthed by him. And that was embarrassing, for those guys to say those words to the Prime Minister. But then at the same time, he was trying to appease, just like what Starmer was doing in UK. the prime minister, and now he's gone. Starmer is gone now. So you see that policies are changing now in the UK. So with the case of Albanese, yeah, and I like the way he solves his problem. I changed my position.
Yeah.
so, so once you say that you change your position, then you are a great manipulator.
He was backed into a corner. He had to say it. This is why I love you. Yeah, you go on, Professor. This is why I.
It's
Yep.
sorry. Yeah. Well, it's interesting when we share our wisdom and understanding. So now, for me, from my academic background, um, when I do my classes, for the graduate students, they just look at me. It's just like I'm saying Fangong, and then after 1 hour, 2 hours, and I said, okay, we are done. And they were still staring at me, and I said, do you still want some more? Some more, do you still want some more lies from me? And they all are. Anyway, but what we are discussing, they learn so much, like when I teach, I always look into the history and what happened and then try to explain to them. This is the reality of things, given the economic or financial model or whatever condition that we face. But we must always not forget where we came from. We look at the history, not just as a family, but as a human being. Whether you are a Polynesian or an Asian, and a European and African, hey, we are one. We are one under God. We are God's precious children. So the diversity that we have in the ethnicity, it brings the best out of God's, God's creation. But again, it's very interesting that we talk about this.
It's very good we talk. Yeah, I love how we can share, Professor. Another thing. Well, because I'm not sure if you've seen the movie. It's called Avatar. The blue. It's in one of the richest. I remember it was one of the most expensive. When I watched that,
the Avatar one. When I first I saw it, I was so mesmerized with the technological advancement that we have in terms of filming, the filming industry. Because what I read, the film was delayed for some time because the technology was not available. This is the first thing, and if you look at it, my goodness, and often, that's the best of what God instilled in us, in our praying, the ability to reason beyond our limited minds. And only God can do that. And we've got, it's a gift. So the Avatar, yeah, I watched that and I said, my goodness, But still going, even now, with the second film by Mel Gibson. Remember the first one, which on the crucifixion now is, I think you said, oh yeah, no, not yet.
Yeah, I remember you were talking about that before.
Yeah, it should come out very soon, and that's basically because the technology was not available to. But amazingly, even with Star Wars and all of these alien, the sci-fi, science fiction movies, you just sit around and ponder and look at it. But that's a gift, that's what God gave us. That's what God gave us. So whatever we do, we try to inspire others, whether it's politics, I know that manipulation is a dirty politics, but hey, everybody, if you want
It's
to survive,
everywhere. Yeah, yeah.
if you want to survive, then you have to. But remember, Christ was the greatest example of the, I would say, the best politician that ever lived. You know, he just didn't play by any dirty books. Christ, he just tell you straight that thou shalt not. Even that um, the story I just read it, the story of the 10 lepers. Remember that the 10 lepers who were healed by Christ, and they went home. And out of the 10, only and only one leper went back, and give back the thanks and honor what Christ did to them and to him in particular. And you know what? That one leper was a Samaritan. He was not a Jew. So the rest were all, from this, the tribes of, but that one leper who was a Gentile went back and honor what Christ did. So it touched your soul when you look at it and say, "Oh my gosh," So all other, even the miracle, even the story of the woman who was stoned.
Yeah, that's right.
The woman, the people they wanted to persecute her for adultery.
Adultery, yeah.
And we know that the law, it's eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and then the outcome that if you commit these acts, then you will definitely be stoned to death. And when you look at it, and if you read the story, what Christ did, just bent down, and wrote something on soil, and then he took up the stone and gave it to those guys, the perpetrators. Let one of you who has no sin cast the first stone.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were totally in shock. The crowd. They thought that when Christ stood up with the stone, they all thought that Christ would be the first one to to throw the stone at her. But rather than doing that, he said, whoever is among you who is without sin can cast the first stone. And so everybody just looked around and thought, my gosh, I am a sinner myself.
Yeah.
And then one by one, they left. But you know what? Now, since we're on that, the new Bible that the Chinese government is now authorizing, there's been a big fuss. I haven't read it, but I saw some. The translation into Chinese language, that changed, and they said that Christ threw the first stone. So the Christians in China are very, very mad with the Chinese, because the communist regime tries to change.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the theological and the spiritual underpinning of the teachings of Christ, no one, who lived before that era, and even and after the era, and that's why I think it was Octavius Caesar who changed the calendar. You know that?
Right, yeah.
The birth of Christ. When the empire became Christianized through through Caesar. What's his name again? Anyway, and then the whole of the Roman Empire, like the AD and after death and BC. But I've seen some of the books written by what we call the sometimes from the academics. They no longer use the BC, before Christ, but they use before the Common Era, PCE.
Yep.
That means they try to move away from the essence of the era, which is everything starts from the birth of Christ, and then after that, after the death of Christ. And I was like, and now we're seeing the communists with their own translation of the Bible saying that Christ threw the first stone.
Yeah.
But you know what? They will be charged. Whatever they do, the Bible says it's very clear that whoever changes an iota of the word, you will be charged accordingly. So I feel sorry for James.
Yeah, it's a big topic, and I love talking about it with you, Professor. I mean, it gets people thinking for the week, when they listen into the conversation and, they think for the week to come back for next week. I wanted to ask some other questions here quickly before I let you go, Professor. Just taking it back what you just said before about the indoctrinate variables, these things your students are learning. I was wondering, does your students, because this is their study, and obviously, you would probably encourage them to be looking at the government and analyzing the government. Are they doing are they looking at the indoctrinate variables and exogenous variables, these type of terms? Are they, what's your feedback on what they think, Professor? Can you give us a quick understanding of how their thoughts are?
Well, see, I always challenge them, like one-on-one, not face-to-face, although that we have, in class. And every time that I would pose a question, I would ask individual students. And then at the same time, you try to bring them into the conversation, and it's interesting because they know. But when we run the models, the reason why, I did them that way, I said, look, sooner or later, you're going to do a thesis, a research work. And that thesis will include the variables or the endogenous, variables that we're not talking about, like income, minimum wage, inflation, you just name it, the cost of it. So once they understand about those, then the statistics has to be collected, and the sets are available. It's either collect through the authority statistics or through the central bank. Or if you don't have the data, which is what we call the primary data, then you'll have to create your own survey questionnaire. And that's where I also assist with them. Create the format of the standard survey questionnaire, like you have your name, the gender, and so on, and then you ask questions. And the reason why we do that is because that information is not available. You cannot find that in the statistics record, because the survey questionnaires that have been designed by the Ministry of Stats, the authority, and even other ministries, they were particular for their own ministries. And if they look into the whole economy, they will also look at, if you do a private research, mostly you will encounter that a lot of variables that you want to do the analysis is not there. You cannot find a numerical number. So the best way and the accepted way is for you to create that through a survey questionnaire. And then once you give out the You interview them. It's either you interview or you just assign people to do it for you. Some students, sometimes you can pay others to do that. And then once the questionnaire is being completed, then you have that information there. All the next step for you is now to translate those questions into numericals. Like translate it into numbers, and you have to use programs. There are programs that we have. You can do the calculation manually, but it takes a long time. But the programs, so at the moment we use what we call our step. I think if whoever is listening are probably familiar with those. It's statistical packages that we use, both in science and in finance and economics. We also use what we call a Shazam, this econometrics software. And there are others. We can also do regression analysis through Excel. You know the word, huh? You see that there's a word in Excel, but the problem with Excel, it doesn't really accommodate with like the variables that we are now talking about.
Okay.
But for other programs that have been specifically developed for this kind of data collection, you just do your survey and then collect that information, translate that into the numbers through the program, and then you'll have the numbers, and then you look at, and then from there you test, and you run the model, and it will give you the significance of those variables, and those variables are the endogenous variables that you have, because in most and all of the cases, exogenous variables are like oil, the price of oil,
you can't control.
and also weather, weather challenges that we have, cyclones and even
COVID,
what we call natural catastrophes. And that includes cyclones and even earthquakes, and so you don't really know when that might happen, But if you want to include one of those variables, then all you have to do is just to this part of the model. It's what we call you can you can put a number in, or you can instruct the program to look into that, and then use what we call proxy. So a proxy numerical number will be picked up by the program to represent, natural catastrophe or, other like price of oil. And that will give you at least close enough to the reality. So when you formulate a hypothesis, this is the first hypothesis. It's about an educated guess. It's when there is a problem and you want to solve the problem, all you have to do is to formulate a hypothesis, which is you have to come up with an educated guess of how to solve that problem, whether it's financial, economic, social, or anything, political. And then you design a methodology to collect the data. And that's where, so if the data is available in stats and other ministries, because they normally do their research, then you don't have to do the survey. You just get an authority from them, because you have to acknowledge where you got the source. And then they allow you, and then you use their findings, If it's not available, then you'll have to, and that's what we call secondary data. Which is already available. The work has already been done by ministries and other researchers. All you have to do is just to get a permission and acknowledge it. Then you use their work. But if it's not, then you have to design your own survey questionnaire. And that's what we call primary. And that is your own data. So if others want to use your results, they have to consult you, and then you give them the blessing and so on. So that's how. And then after that, from this educated guess hypothesis, and then you choose which methodology that you're going to use after collecting the data. So normally we have to look at the mathematics or stats or maths. You can solve. That's why if you look at economics and finance, this, it sometimes you look at it and look at the maths, it's like you are in another universe.
It's so cool.
But those are
It's so cool what you're saying, Professor.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, because then once you have that, then just enter the numbers, and then your model, you have that model. And that's where you test for every variable now. So because you now command the software, please, I want the R-squared test. I want the significance, you have to do all of those tests. Once you are done with all of those tests, then that is where you finally sit down and look at it. Wow, what I postulated, what I proposed to be the resolution. Now, according to my analysis, now it supports that. And that's why, when it's, and then you conduct numerous analysis, if it comes up with the same, then you can reject the hypothesis or you accept, depending on that. And then from there, but you don't actually say that this is the final. Remember, because this is just the beginning of your work. And that's how we arrive at what we call theories. So you start from a concept, hypothesis, and actually the case, then you develop a methodology to prove that. And then after that, you have the results. If it's acceptable enough according to the quantitative and qualitative methods, then publish it. And so that's the original concept. But if that has been tested over a period of time, used by others, and then finally, if it's accepted that it doesn't have those flaws like that, then it becomes what we call a theory. Okay, so from the hypothesis, the educated guess, this is the solution that you propose for whatever happened, And if once you go through that, then it becomes a concept, hypothesis, a theory. And if you continue to test this over a long period of time, and it has been proven that stands the test of time, then it will become a law. So you start from a problem, and then we have a concept, and then you have a hypothesis, a theory, and then of course, eventually, then when it becomes a law, that means it's true. That's it, That's it. It's proven, And in economics and finance, there are many laws. Like, for example, in capitalism, where it's a law of supply and demand. So that went through quite a period of time, through rigorous.
So that's a law, Professor. You're saying that's a law right there.
Yeah.
Just said, okay, yeah, I get you.
Yeah, it's now cool. It's a law, the law of supply and demand.
Supply and demand is the law. Yeah.
Yes, it is. But before it finally got its law status, it went through that rigorous from hypothesis, testings, the theory, and then eventually it's now been proven. So there are a lot of other laws. And that's why you'll find that most of, I would say all of the Nobel Prize winners in any field, what they arrived at, their work, it would eventually become the law. One of the tests, it's the law of, it's called the Nash equilibrium, That was developed by one of the famous economists. He passed away probably early, not very long ago, but his name is John Nash. And he was a brilliant guy. And I read through his thesis. He only wrote about 19 pages of his doctoral thesis, but it's all maths, you know. But he was trying to prove and set a pathway how to solve disputes. Well, it was all maths. So now his studies has now become one of the core of the legal system all over the world. They use a Nash equilibrium model to settle disputes. But that's how it arrived into. And I think the brilliant story behind Nash. After, if you know that if you have any moment, look into. There's a movie called The Beautiful Mind. Have you?
It's got the actor
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe. That's it. Yeah, I've seen it once, but I got to watch it again, especially what you're talking about now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you see that guy, because he was awarded the Nobel Prize in economics, and the work that he did became the national curriculum. So it's a lot.
So that's Nash. Yeah. Russell Crowe is acting as Nash. Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, and one of the he develops that what we call the game theory. He was the founder of that.
Okay.
The game theory, okay. And that's one of the core topics in microeconomics. So the last semester, microeconomics, I taught that. I had to explain, to the students, you need to understand this because, but anyway, that's that's a reality of.
That's a very interesting. We're just very taken back, and you've mentioned this so many times over the weeks that we've spoken to each other, and it takes me a little bit because I don't have that same kind of mind. Like your mind is very. These words are very sophisticated for myself. I'm a very simple man, but it's taken me so long to eventually understand these terms and these wording that you're talking about, and it's when you see it, it's very I'm lit up trying to like now I want to watch that movie you're talking about because I've seen it once, but I forgot that movie. But yeah, the last question I want to say according to this is what was the question? I've just lost that question that we had, but the question that I had was this topic here, microeconomics. Like as a professor, because if I'm running a government, mate, I'm running a team specifically for microeconomics. Is there a team in the Samoan government that actually just focus on microeconomics and literally just gets as much data as you can, or because having data really helps where you're at, Professor. What do they have? This?
I don't really think so, but the Department of Stats, the Ministry of Stats, they collect this data, and even central bank, and even Treasury and other institutions as well. So their responsibility is to publicize those because they conduct the surveys, even the Ministry of Agriculture as well, because we have an agricultural survey, a household survey, and all of those. So our students who are doing advanced researches in the masters and even up to the PhD programs would have to use that. But if it's not available with them, then you'll have to do it on your own. And that is what we call primary data. When I did my master's program at University of New England, all of my data was collected from the secondary materials. That means the central bank had Ministry of Stats and also Development Bank. So I was fortunate to have access to the data. Then come my PhD, most of the data that I collected were from the primary data. I had to develop my own questionnaire. I even came back to Samoa to do the research.
Yep.
Gave out questionnaires to the fisheries because I looked into the impact of the Alia technology, the fishing boats that we have, the catamaran, the two fishing boats. So that was a technology introduced to Samoa, which what I discovered was that although that improved the productivity of the fishing industry, but then the reality is it contributed significantly to the loss of the traditional knowledges that were practiced by our fishers. Like they go out in the canoes and they look for the birds, and once they find the birds and they use the traditional technology, a lot of progress come out of that. And they just catch the fish, and it's amazing. And when the fish is thrown to the front, and then when it comes back to the fisher, you just tap the tuna, and then the tuna falls right inside the canoe. But I looked at the lure that they used. The normal lures that we have, it's metal, but it has although that it's oval, but then at the same time, there is another extended out bit of the metal to hold on the fish. Once the fish, gets hooked, then it won't be unless the string or the fishing string will gets broken. But for the Samoan, the traditional, this is made from the shells, special shells of some of the marine, I say bivalves that we have, some of them. And then, this talent of those who created the lures, I think that's almost gone, which is really sad. That's what I found out, because the moment the new technology of the catamaran was introduced, because this is Samoan invention, but that was started by some of the Peace Corps.
Professor, did you say Samoa was invented the catamaran boat design?
Yeah.
Or the...
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So that's actually a Samoan
design. Well, the catamaran, if you look at the history, our ancestors used to travel around through that, large alia, and the catamaran. But what we did with the technology that was introduced in the late 70s was to use that and then transform that into fishing vessels. The idea
just transform the whole game. Yeah, I'll get you.
Yeah. So and then we have the aluminium catamarans. Most of the fishing vessels that we have here were born out of that technology that we use. Anyway, so interestingly, what I found out from my research in the PhD, in fact, my contribution to the literature was the Sustainable Livelihoods Framework. It's now used all over by World Bank and IMF and even UN. And then what I found out was that once the catamaran fishing boats were introduced, fewer and fewer, and even none. I know for sure that probably by now there is no fishing, no fisherman, who is practicing that traditional method, because you have to. What used to happen in the past? Probably like midnight. Then they would get together, and then what we call alafanga. So they go in a number of maybe 10 canoes, and they are all equipped with this traditional fishing gears, and then they go up right up. You cannot see the salmon, the calico, and once they see the perch, that's how. And then you paddle after them.
Yeah.
It's so once you get over that, then all you just throw down the lure using that the rod that we have was from one of the plants that we have. We call the Ophea, but now we have the metal rod, but we use the Ophea at the time. So once a tuna got hooked into that, all you have to do is just to, just put your hand back, and then let it, throw it to the front, and then when it comes back, you just slap it, and then it will fall right in inside the canoe. And the reason is that because the lure, the creation of the lure does not have that, that hook, that special hook.
Okay.
Because if you look at the real the metal lure, it's like this, and then you have that beam.
Yep.
So once you hook, and then you have to take it away. But this traditional one, you don't have to take away. Once it comes, you just hit, and then the traditional lure automatically is automatically released from the mouth of the. Wow. For me too, when I looked at it, I was so impressed.
I've seen videos of it, Professor. It's been on. I've seen videos. I think in other cultures like Vanuatu or some places out there, they still do that. And I saw the video of them. I think somewhere in Asia as well. They're chucking these massive fishes, and they're just going at it. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So they're all saying Samoa used to do that too.
Oh, yeah. That's how we used to. And we have proverbs. That means how brilliant the dealing fisher, the guy who's even how good who you are, who you are about your the art of fishing. And sometimes you will miss, once you got it hooked off, it won't. Sometimes it will fall in, sometimes it will fall off of the boat, and that's why that saying type. And that's now for me. When I went through that data collection myself, and I said, my gosh, I never knew this until I did the actual research, and I even interviewed, because once the ALIA, the catamaran technology was fully operational, the traditional knowledges of fishing tuna are all gone. It's all in memories of the textbooks. We teach our children about how we fish. This is so advanced. If you look at how the knowledge has been preserved. And even one of the other discoveries that I found out from looking into traditional technologies, fishing technologies that will enhance sustainability, the livelihoods, is it's called the mataike. There is a special lure to catch the octopus, and and it's the mataike. So I looked into it. My goodness, I read quite a few. But I have to make sure, because when my father was a minister, and he used to, when I was very young, he used to go out fishing octopus using that. And I saw it, he was. Um, you have to get a stone first. You have to mold that stone into its shape, and then you get the shells. It's called the pulea. These are the bivalves, And then once you have those, then you weave it around this stone, and then from there, at the end of the stone, the lure, the octopus lure, there is a long tail. And I said, what does this mean? But that tail, it's called it's made from special fonts, And what I found out, I said, my gosh, because if you go to the reef and if you fish using the matafe, all you have to do is just put that lure, the pule, shell, and then all of a sudden, if you shake it like this, if you shake it like this, then the octopus will come and grab the lure. So all you have to do is just take it out and then catch the octopus. And then I said, how this is? But the story is, there's a story behind. I'm sure you must have heard. The story is that when it was very low tide, the tide was very low. There was a rat, and he wanted to fish. He wanted to eat some fish, so he caught quite a few, and he got carried away because the tide was so low, and the corals were all exposed. He went all the way down the end of the corals, and then the tide began to come up slowly. So the greed of the rat just overwhelmed him, that he just forgot about that the tide is rising,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, as he was standing on one of the corals, he just couldn't. And then he cried, because definitely that he would die. The shores are, it's quite far off, and he cannot swim. Otherwise, maybe another sharks would probably eat him. And in his misery, he saw one of the octopus swimming, by. And so this is the story. And he begged the octopus, when the octopus to please, can he take him to the shores? So the octopus was kind enough to, okay, let's jump on my head. And so the rat jumped on his head, and then the octopus swim to the shore. And just before the octopus reaches the shore, the rat just jumped to the beach, and then he started mocking he started mocking the octopus, that how stupid the octopus was, that. So, but the moral of the story is that he betrayed. It's about betrayal. The rat genuinely asked the octopus to save his life, and the octopus gave him everything, The octopus swam all the way, and then he just jumped up and then mocked the octopus. So it's about betrayal. But out of that story, it's just the story about this octopus lure, the matafe. That's why there is a long tail there. So whenever the octopus sees this, the octopus still thinks, oh, it's a rat.
The rat is manipulating the octopus. Yeah.
So even for me too, when I was looking into the wisdom, there's so much, our ancestors who created, they had brilliant minds. And most, and I would say all of these traditional technologies have now been lost because of the new technologies that now come in. So that was just one portion of my data collection.
Yeah.
For my the theory the model that I developed, which is called the Sustainable Livelihoods Framework. It's now used by 8 agencies in Canada and around.
Professor, your shin,
It's
your model.
a sustainable livelihoods framework.
Okay, sustainable. And is that a law now, or is that like a still like what?
When I finished my PhD, since I was a Commonwealth fellow, the product belonged to Commonwealth through Canada because they were the ones who, like New Zealand, Australia, UK, and so they own the copyrights for that. So whatever whatever they want to use, the university with the findings. But I use quite a few papers from the work, which is